Welcome to Picks with the Professor, the podcast where a real statistics professor.
And his cousin Jared.
And the Kevin Garnett to the Ray Allen and Paul Pierce. Jake.
Well done. Well done. Gives you sports betting tips. I am Professor Side. You can follow me on Twitter at Professor Side. You can follow my cousin Jared on Twitter at Cousin Jared. And you can follow my friend Jake on Twitter at myfriend_Jake. Today is Friday, March 25th, 2022. And this episode covers today's Sweet 16 college basketball games. In case you're new here, I built a mathematical model that predicts what the spread and total should be for every Division I college basketball game. As I go through the plays, remember the A picks are the ones I love, B picks are the ones I like, and C picks are the leans. However, please remember that good and bad variance will occur. So as much as I'd like to say the model will be profitable each and every day, that is an impossible reality for any gambler. Yesterday, we've had some good days, we've had some bad days. Yesterday is the day that we just, let's package that baby up and figure out how to reproduce it every day, right?
Yeah, nothing like not having any losses on the table. I love it.
Yeah, it was great to be a viewer of the show yesterday, that's for sure.
Yeah. It's like I said, Jake and I were talking a little bit about this pre-show, right? I always say that spiel, and I just want to remind people, there will be bad days, there will be good days. Unfortunately, we won't go 7-0 on the 7 picks we give out every day. It's an unfortunate reality, right? I wish I could say we would, but that's, I don't want you to have crazy high expectations. Don't take it on a second mortgage, betting on every pick we have. We like our picks, we're confident in our picks, but unfortunately, we won't be able to pull that one off. But we sure will try today to do the same thing for the 4 games tonight. And before we get to those, reminder, please hit that like button if you're on YouTube. Subscribe or follow if you aren't yet. It's the only way to ensure you don't miss any of the college basketball, MLB, or college football content that this channel provides. Share with a friend if you know others in the game, and drop a comment on Twitter or YouTube. We love those and try to respond to as many as we can. Tonight, we're going to start off with another large spread. Yesterday, we started off with that big Gonzaga spread and had an upset pulled, and that was a lot of fun to watch. Today, similar situation, St. Peter's and Purdue. Purdue is a 12.5-point favorite with a total of 134. I think yesterday we all kind of thought Arkansas had a chance to pull it off. St. Peter's, no 15 seed has ever made it past this round, and I think only 2 have ever even gotten here before this. So a lot of intrigue. It should be a fun one to see if they can pull off the upset to kick off the night like Arkansas did. The model thinks Purdue should be favored by 12.6. That's about as close as you can get. So it's a pass on the side for me. It's a lot of points. Purdue's definitely the better team. They are going to provide some size mismatch, but that's too many points. So I'm staying away from the side. The total, the model thinks it should be 133. It's only a lean for me under 134, so only a C pick there. Yesterday morning, this number was still at 136. So if you saw my numbers in the Google sheet, hopefully you jumped and got that. Neither team really wants to play fast. We've long talked about how Purdue's defense has gotten better of late. They've been a pretty good under team. I had them correctly over last game against Texas, and that first game against Yale, it was a wild first half over, and then they just stopped playing. So the fact that my numbers now flipping and saying under, I think is a good sign here that it's reacting to how Purdue is playing. I always like when you correctly get an over and then it says come back to the under. That means it's adjusting properly, and I like that. I just don't like losing the 2 points of value between yesterday and today. So yesterday, if you got this at 135.5, 136, that's a B pick. Now that we've lost a little bit of value, it drops to a C pick. I still think under's the right side. I still think there's going to be some long stretches of 2-4 points at a time. So still like the under, just not as much at the number of 134 than 136. Jake, are you comfortable laying the points with Purdue, or are you going to grab those 12.5 points with St. Peter's?
Yeah, I'm going to lay them with Purdue here. This is a newfound territory for St. Peter's, right? Like we saw that Doug Eddard gets a NIL deal with Buffalo Wild Wings and all this other media. So this is new territory. They're also way, way undersized. They've got 2 6'10" guys on the roster, and they barely play. Their best big man is 6'7". He's going to be eat his chin at that height. It's like, and then you've got NBA point guard and Jaden Ivey. You've got a week of prep for Purdue. I mean, I know it's basically like going to a road game. It's in Philly. They're going to bring all the St. Peter's fans out, and then add to anybody that just wants to see upset craziness. I mean, props to Shane Holloway and this team. They've actually beat these teams, not just got lucky and got somebody hot or anything like that. They've looked like in their control, and I don't. There's a reason the 15 seed hasn't gone far past this before. And I think it has a lot to do with all the outside that happens like in this week that they're just not prepared for and keeping their head on it. Where a team like Purdue, who plays at the top of the game, is used to all the media attention and all that goes along.
Yeah, and before we get to you, because Jared, I will add a couple points there. Yeah, like you said, no, I think if you took the entire student body of St. Peter's and put it in that arena, I still think there would be some empty seats, but there will be a lot of people, a lot of fans, and a lot of people wanting to see the upset. So I think you're right. It'll be mostly a road game for Purdue atmosphere wise. But you talk about why the 15 seeds never win. It's I think it's twofold. I think it's what you said was a good point about all the attention, but I think it's also whatever the 15 seed did surprised people. And now the other team has a full week to prepare for that. And so that's obviously something to consider as well. Cousin Jared, what's your take?
So I've got a lean here, and it's very unlike me. So I'm going to kind of good cop, bad cop myself right here, and
right.
and probably not make a decision and put it off. But so I'm leaning towards laying the points with Purdue here. That's a lot of points.
It's a lot of points.
Yeah. But when I go look at the other models that the professor compares himself to, really Ken Palm's kind of on an island here, giving a lot of respect. I don't know if it's respect to St. Peter's or disrespect to Purdue, making this line about 10.5. Everybody else is 13.5, 15.7, 16. So there's definitely, kind of a lean towards Purdue with some of these other models out there. So that's the first thing. Second thing is I still have this image of Purdue from early in the season in my head, where they would just clobber teams and score, 90 points. On the other side of things, obviously St. Peter's got hot at the right time. We just saw what a double-digit favorite can do last night with Gonzaga, because that line got to 10 at some points. They lost outright. Not quite an apples-to-apples comparison there, but you see where I'm going with this. And Purdue, to your point, hasn't been playing, as you mentioned, that they've been under team the second half of the season. They just have not been playing the same way that they were before. Still playing well, but just a different type of basketball. As the professor likes to say, there's a lot of ways that St. Peter's can lose this game, but lose it by 12 or less. My gut, it just feels right laying the 12.5 points with Purdue here. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go with, Ken Palm maybe a little bit off here. Maybe the professor's off by half a point or so here compared to everybody else. And that laying that 12.5 points, I'm still going to be able to get to the window. I don't feel great about it. That's a ton of points. That's very unlike me. But I just think when it comes down to it, Purdue, if they play the way that they're capable of, there's no way St. Peter's is going to be able to stay on the court with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest fear you have with Purdue, if you're laying the points, is that we've seen them at times just not put teams away that are beneath them in competition. That's the biggest fear. But they put Yale away, and honestly, St. Peter's and Yale are probably relatively similar. I mean, they're closer in comparison than any of the Big Ten teams probably.
Yep.
And if they put, I mean, they have the opportunity to, like you said, if they come out to play, St. Peter's just can't hang with them physically. Yep. And you would hope that in a Sweet 16 game that they're going to come out and they're going to play hard the whole time. They're going to put them away. They're not going to fall asleep.
And I think having the 5 days to prepare helps, as opposed to catching them just after 1 day's rest or something like that. To me, I think that's going to make a little bit of a difference.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's an interesting point you make about Ken Palm's numbers. I do believe that he adjusts when I copy and paste rankings over to help build what the other models are saying. I've noticed that Ken Palm's move a lot in the tournament. I think, for better or worse, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but he gives a lot of weight to these tournament games in his numbers. So I'm not saying that's good or bad. I have noticed that. So I think that's what you're seeing is the fact that St. Peter's played really well those first 2 games, and so I think he gave them a huge bump compared to other models who are more treating it as just the most recent game, which gets a little bit more weight, but not a ton more weight. So, then we've also got tipping off right after that, Providence and Kansas. That'll be a 7:30 tip. Kansas is a 7.5 point favorite with a total of 141.5. My model makes the total 140.9. So pretty close there. This isn't a crazy first half under if you wanted to look that route like I did yesterday. But I think instead I'm going to lay the 7.5 with Kansas. The reason why at the book that we are using, It's minus 103. So minus 7.5, minus 103 is kind of equivalent to minus 7. So the model thinks it should be 7.8. I'm basically essentially laying 7. It's only a C pick for me on Kansas, just a lean. This feels a lot like the Villanova game yesterday. I think that Kansas is the right side, just like I thought Villanova was the right side. I just don't love this as a full-scale unit pick because I don't think there's a ton of value in the number. And I thought, like I said, we talked about Villanova yesterday, and me personally, I was more confident than the model. Jake was more confident in it. I just didn't like the number there. And the same thing here. I'd feel much more comfortable if I was laying 6. Remy Martin has looked better every game. Based off of that, I think there's a real conversation that Kansas, Villanova, and Houston are the best team remaining. I think it's a real toss-up there. Whereas I think Kansas, without him, I think is probably a notch below those other two teams. If you're worried about the Creighton game, Kansas hit 95% of the free throws in that game. So if there are late fouls, there's some confidence that they'll make them. I think rather than worrying about the Creighton game with Kansas, I think you should actually be more worried about the Providence-Richmond game. Richmond went 1 of 22 from 3. I don't even know how that's possible. I feel like if you put me out there, I feel like I could make 1 of 22. I'm probably not 2, but I could probably make 1 of them, right? I mean, I don't care if there's and now that I get the shot off, right? If the blocks don't count, that's not a shot attempt, right? So ignore the fact that there would be people shoving it back in my face. But I mean, I feel like I can get 1 of the 22, right? I will gladly eat this play if Kansas goes 1 of 22 or anywhere near that from 3. I think Kansas offense is not going to fall apart like Richmond's did. When Providence loses, they lose big, and that's very much on the table here when their good luck runs out, which it eventually will. We just don't know when. Like I said, I just wish I was laying 6 rather than essentially 7, so I'm scaling the play back to just a lean. It's a tight number. The numbers are getting tighter. I feel like on a lot of these games, we talk about the sides, we're all very like wishy-washy because all these numbers just get really tight. So only a lean for me on Kansas. Jake, what do you got?
I'm leaning the other way. I don't like it. I like Remy Martin's been playing well, and Abaji has been kind of quiet. I mean, I know he's got his box score numbers look good, but it's not been what he was during the middle and beginning part of the year where he was really just taking over games at times. And I think Providence has got the defense to hold this game close if they come out and play. Like, I know 1 of 22 is an aberration, but you got to give some credit to Providence's defense being like as good as they are. Cooley is having his best year as a coach. He's got a really good team. He's got 7 guys he can really depend on at any point, especially with Bynum coming off the bench. And they just seem to make the right plays at the right time. And I know we've talked about all year with this luck thing, but sometimes that's part of it. Like we talk about Villanova does the same thing, right? Villanova makes the right plays at the right time. It seems like Providence does too for the most part. And that game, like that makes me nervous because they took a really beaten up Creighton team and took some really like some luck for them to come out of that. Because, I mean, Creighton didn't have a big guy of value and that was able to go. And, I mean, Nate Watson is really good, and he's been playing well. Of course, Al Durham, but I think they've got a good chance to do it.
Well, that's my fear with this game is Kansas seems to be a little bit like a survive in advance mode, which doesn't bode well laying the points. That's why I said I wish I'd be more comfortable laying 6 because I think Kansas is up late. I think there's fouls, and then the question is just – do they win by 4? Do they win by 8, right, or something like that? That's what I said. I'd be more comfortable laying a lower number just because Kansas doesn't seem to have that, like, we want to put you away and kill you type thing going. Maybe that changes today. But, yeah, a very tight number for sure. Cousin Jared, are you going to break the tie for us, or are you looking at the total?
Well, the first thing that I want to ask is, have I entered some sort of alternate reality where the professor is laying 7.5 points and Jake is taking 7.5 points? This doesn't seem right. Doesn't feel right.
Very Twilight Zone. I was thinking when I was writing up my notes of this, I was like, this is going to be a weird show.
Yeah. So no, I'm not going to break the tie here because I have looked this one up and down and I can't find any value from my perspective here. The only thing I would say is, Professor, I think you actually hit the nail on the head here. If you would have asked for Cousin Jared's play yesterday on that Villanova game that you mentioned, I would have said Villanova money line was my favorite bet on the board last night. Had a similar thought before I saw the lines today on Kansas that I may feel pretty good about the money line there. But yesterday you were able to get Villanova at like minus 220, minus 225, something in that area. This Kansas money line is out to like minus 330, and there is no way that I would lay that type of money almost no matter how confident I was that Kansas was actually going to win this game. So no value here for me. Wish I could could break the tie here, but some things are just left better as is. So
I mean, that's
viewer, you can make your decision here.
And it's a great reminder, right? Just because there's fewer games on the board doesn't mean you have to bet all of them, right? You can just sit back and watch them. If you don't feel like you have an edge, don't go for it. If you feel like you've got an edge, fire away. But if not, you don't have to. So always a good reminder there for us, there, Cousin Jared. The two late games, North Carolina and UCLA, should tip off around 9:40 Eastern time. UCLA is a 2-point favorite with a total of 142.5. The model makes a total 142.8, so it's a pass for me on the total. Instead, I've got a B pick on UCLA -2. And look, y'all, I'm well aware that North Carolina got ahead by more than 20 on Baylor, but did you know they almost lost that game? I don't know if y'all knew that. I just have to remind. I hear a lot about how UNC got up on Baylor, but I have to. I don't know if anybody else watched the end of that game, but they did almost lose. And in fact, of all the horrible, there were horrible calls both ways. It was one of the worst ref games I've ever seen. And so you can, in a game that goes to overtime, you can literally cherry pick any one of them and say, had that gone different, the game ends in regulation. Yeah. I get that, but I am going to point out, the last bad call, just because again there were so many. But the last bad call was late in the game. There was an and one where the North Carolina guy got fouled long before he dunks that. If they call that on the floor, he makes both free throws. Rather than the and one, Baylor wins that by a point in regulation. And we're not even talking about North Carolina in this game. Again, there were a total of fouls every which way. I'm not saying that that's the way it should be or whatever. I'm just pointing out you can't solely focus on how good UNC looked early in that game without remembering how bad they looked being pressured. Both of those are true. UCLA's had a week to prep how they're going to handle this, and they do a lot of the same things defensively Baylor does. UCLA has been playing up-tempo of late. UCLA can handle that. They don't mind going up-tempo, and they have the ability to slow UNC down. So I think it's a really bad matchup for North Carolina team. And North Carolina team has had a great month. I don't want to take that away from them, but I think people are getting a little bit too wrapped up in the hype of how good UNC looked early in that game, building that lead, and not about the fact that UCLA is a pretty good team as well and is going to be just a matchup nightmare in my opinion. I think 2 is too short. The model thinks 3.2, and I think UCLA wins by at least 3 in this one, so it's a B pick for me. Jake, what do you got?
As much as I want the story of a Duke North Carolina Final Four, I don't think it's going to happen. I think UCLA. I think you hit it. I think we just saw the end of Carolina's run in that second half against Baylor. So the book's out on him. Mick Cronin's a great defensive coach. He's going to be able to easily repeat what Baylor did. And they may not press like that, but they've got a much better defensive 5 going right now just because of Baylor's injuries. And they've got a little more size to battle with Baycott and Manick. Because I think Juzang can guard any of them on the court except for maybe Baycott. And UCLA is so purposeful with the ball. And I don't think North Carolina is ready for that. I don't think they're disciplined enough to play the kind of defense they need to slow down. To not slow them down, but stop them when they need to. And with this being such a short number, it's really just a couple possessions. They don't get the defensive job done, and UCLA takes off. And especially North Carolina, who that guard play at the end of the game, you lose Love. Was it Love or Davis that fouled out? I can't remember.
Who's Love?
Love. So with Love fouling out, they barely could get the ball up the court with just a light pressure. God forbid UCLA puts any kind of real pressure on that, especially with Tiger Campbell being able to eat somebody up. It's going to be rough for them. I think UCLA gets it done.
All right, Cousin Jared.
So both of these teams, I feel like you go back across the season and look at both of them and see how up and down they've been. You only have to go back to the last game with North Carolina to see how up and down they've been. There's no way that I'm taking a side in this game. But this is actually my favorite bet on the board tonight, the over 142.5 here. North Carolina is one of those teams that the model this year just stubbornly tried to keep playing the unders, even though it was going terribly for the model. And UCLA, I feel like always had a slight over edge there. And I think they played pretty well when the model saw a slight edge on the over there. So to me, this is easy. I'm taking the over here. I think you mentioned UCLA has been playing more up tempo. Obviously, North Carolina wants to play that way. That UNC Baylor game, Baylor good defense, that went over before it even got to overtime. So I feel good about the over 142.5 here.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. The model doesn't have an edge there, but I think the interesting thing with North Carolina is that the model kept saying, "Oh, they're playing a little bit faster. Let's bump the totals up." But then North Carolina kept playing faster as the season went along. It's like it's kind of frustrating because it's not like they played fast all season. It's like they played fast and they played a little bit faster. They played a little bit faster, and the numbers just not able to catch up. So I think you're right. If you force me to pick a total and just knowing that, I think that over is probably the right play. Like I said, UCLA can go fast, and won't bother them one bit. And of course, they will be purposeful with the ball, and that's why this total is only 142.5. Right? It's not like UCLA playing a good defensive team, or like the Akron game. Right? The total would be much lower, but UCLA can handle the speed, and that isn't going to bother them, and that they are going to be deliberate with the ball is probably not the worst thing in the world, because it's not like we're having to get over a number like 150 or something like that.
Right.
Last game of the night, Iowa State in Miami. That should tip around 10 p.m. Eastern. Miami is a 2.5-point favorite with a total of 133. The model makes this a pick'em, but the model has really missed on Miami, and so I'm staying away from the side on this one. I'm not saying that the model is wrong and that it shouldn't be a pick'em. I'm just commenting that when I look back at the data, I found that if I miss by this much on a team in the previous month or so, that it's just best to stay away. And so I don't have a side play here. I think that the game should be close and an interesting one to close out our night. Instead, I'm going under 133, and it's an A pick for me. The model thinks 130.8. And look, we got both those first half unders yesterday. One game went under for the full game and one did not. So yesterday that was the right call, but I had specific reasons to do that. And both of those were the fact that I saw things in both of those matchups last night that I thought there's a chance that this game has crazy high scoring runs. And I thought it was more likely they came out slow with the new gym. And I wanted to just stay away from the second half. And that's exactly what we saw in that Duke-Texas Tech game. The scoring went crazy in the second half. So I was very glad to not be a part of that. And I didn't know which game it would happen in, but I thought going both first half made sense. And it did. Here I'm going full game under because, yes, it is still a new gym, but I don't know when the bad basketball is going to happen. I just know it's going to happen in this game. And so I want the full game because I don't want it might start off a little bit higher scoring. They shake those first half totals down so low. The first half could still go over a little bit, but at some point, whether it's early or late, we're going to have some really bad and ugly basketball. And so I want the full game under. It's an A pick. I love this pick. I have the utmost faith in Iowa State frustrating Miami's offense and keeping them down. And I have the utmost faith in Iowa State not being able to score for long stretches in this game. So I think this is going to be an ugly one. Should be tight, though. I have no idea who wins, but I think the under is your smartest investment here. Jake, which side are you on this one?
I'm riding this Miami team. This Miami team seems to be playing their best ball at the right time of year. I think Iowa State has gotten a gift of a draw to get them this far. Grabbing an LSU team that really had packed it in and was done.
And I'll comment on that LSU team too. An LSU team that ahead of time it was hard to exactly know exactly where their heads were with everything. And then now you come out and I think they've already got 3 of their guys into the transfer portal, and it's like, yeah, in hindsight, but we didn't know that, right? Unless you were talking to those players, we were speculating, right? And I always caution against this. But yeah, in hindsight, for sure, those guys clearly were checked out. You saw it in the game, you see it literally, they have now checked out entering the transfer portal.
I don't know that they're really deserving to be here. Miami has really gone through the gauntlet here. They've gone through a couple really good teams, especially the Auburn win. They looked dominating in that Auburn win. I think it was 18, 19-point game.
It was a lot, yeah.
Yeah, and so I really think this Miami team's playing at the right level. They're playing very well together. Larry Nake's a good coach. He's been here. I think that's one of the biggest differences is him knowing how to get his team at the right level at the right time. And with a short number, I think they'll win this, and it'll be under 10, like 5. But I think Miami's got this one.
All right, because Jared.
Man, we're just covering all of our bases here. So I'm taking the points with Iowa State in this game. I'm trusting the model, saying that it should be a toss-up, get a close game, and I think 2.5 points could be valuable. I know that the professor's shocked that I'm not taking the under here.
I am.
With such a large under edge. And, this is where, my I'm not running the model. I don't look at the guts of the model, but I just feel like those unders on Iowa State missed all season. There were a couple of teams in the Big 12 where the model was just always saying play the under. That would have been Baylor, West Virginia, and Iowa State. Basically, no matter what, it just said play the under. And I feel like I was just bitten one too many times on missing the unders in those games there. So I'm gonna trust the model. I'm gonna take 2.5 points, and yeah, it's completely possible that Miami blows them out of the water. But at the same time, Miami's been real up and down all season as well. When they look good, they've looked really good, but they've had games that just kind of leave you scratching your head. So I'm taking the 2.5 points. I'm just too scared of the total here.
I think the Iowa State unders that missed were against Baylor and West Virginia. I think we're the only ones.
Touche.
But you're right. The model did not do well with Baylor totals at all. Baylor being with the injuries, the model just could not figure out exactly how they were playing it. And Drew being such a good coach, right? He handled that and adjusted how he was playing. And West Virginia, I don't really understand that one. Yeah, the model really struggled with West Virginia totals as well. Not maybe to the same extent as Navy, but how could you miss as bad as we missed on the Navy totals? Right. But Jared, you make some good points there too. And my thought on this game is that this is the highest variance game on the board with regards to who wins this. Like you said, when Miami looks great, they look great, and they could easily destroy Iowa State. Yeah. Or when they look bad, they don't, and Iowa State could win a game that's like, we talk about like the 55-40 game. Anything can happen really sidewise on this game, and I wouldn't be surprised. So yeah, lots of angles on that one for you. And that's all we've got for you today. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Picks with the Professor. A reminder, check out that Google Sheet for predictions at that website, www.pickswiththeprofessor.com. If you haven't done so yet, click that subscribe button to ensure all of the college basketball content for the rest of the season dropped right into your feed. We will see you tomorrow when we'll break down all the Elite Eight games. Until then, remember, you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.